I've never used a gavel before. Okay. The public, what? Oh, okay. Correction. The public hearing on the tentative 2024-2025 OCC budget is now called to order. All individuals who would like to speak must sign in at the front desk. The resolution of the legislature authorizing the public hearing has been entered into the record. Was the notice duly published?
It was.
That's okay. Is there anyone here to speak? If so, come to the podium. No one here to speak. Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to be heard? No. Okay, there are no speakers, so the hearing, if there's none, we will adjourn the public hearing and move on to the regular meeting. Okay? So, are there any corrections to the minutes of the previous meeting? Seeing none, they are approved. Okay, the first item on our regular agenda is emergency management. This is confirming an appointment to the Onondaga County Fire Advisory Board. Dennis Smith, any questions on Dennis? No? Comments? Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Okay, do I have a second? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next is the Planning Department. We are amending the 2024 budget to accept grant funds from the New York State Empire State Development for the Central New York Regional revitalization, all of that, $100,000. Hi, Megan.
Hi, how are you?
Is it on?
Hi. Yeah, so the regional market approached quite a few partners around last year's timeframe, seeking support from the state and local sectors to talk about some of the physical conditions at the market. They've obviously been around since about 1935. They've had significant physical deterioration of their campus despite efforts to make improvements over the years. So they started a community campaign to try and garner support to support some of the physical improvements that they were looking at for the market. And at that time, they identified somewhere between $11 million to $30 million in emergency immediate need for their campus facilities, with an overall sort of vision for about $90 million in improvements for full-scale revitalization. Yeah, they've noted that as a state authority under New York State Department of Ag and Markets, they're not necessarily eligible for a lot of the grants typically offered to the government and non-for-profit sectors. They made it clear then, and it's obviously been solidified in the news and by the recent New York State Comptroller's audit, that they are not, or that their financial condition is somewhat stressed. So the regional market is obviously a great asset to the community, the ag sector, the local food system, the tourism industry here in Onondaga County, as well as counties surrounding Onondaga County. So it's safe to say, and I don't think it's stretched to say, that it's something that this community really supports. However, prior to supporting the market with financial support, we feel it's critical and are conditioning any future financial support on a real plan for the Regional Market Authority for fiscal solvency and to create a path forward that maximizes any public funding that's put into the market facility. So the approach we are taking is to partner with the authority to prepare what we're calling the Central New York Market Revitalization Plan. So it's not only going to look at buildings and infrastructure needs, but more importantly, it's going to look at their financial picture, its operations and management, their revenue streams, et cetera. It's more of a financial and operations plan at this point than it really is a capital plan. As a second phase to it, we'll also be getting into envisioning what the future of the Central New York regional market should be and what it might look like. So new programming opportunities, revenue opportunities very specifically, adaptive reuse of buildings potentially, how this serves their wholesale and retail tenants, and offers better offerings for the community at large. So yeah, our ask today is for the legislator to enter into contract to accept $100,000 in funding from Empire State Development under their Urban Community and Development Program Strategic Planning Grant Program towards a preliminary planning effort. We will be pairing it with approximately $225,000 from our ag-related Plan Onondaga implementation funding. We're hoping to release an RFP in the coming days to qualified firms, and that project will be managed from the Department of Planning.
Great, thank you. Question, Dave, or Brian?
Thank you. This is great. You know, I've been talking with the county executive on this since early last year, I think the very beginning of last year. You know, it's everything Megan just described in a whole lot more, but I can sum it up in a sentence, and that is Onondaga County has the vision for what it could be. Onondaga County values what it is to thousands upon thousands of people every single weekend of the year. And on top of that, Onondaga County recognizes, and has taken the lead, picking up the football, if you will, and running with it to be the catalyst for what is sorely needed there to keep that asset going and strong. So I know there's more comments, but I'll put a motion on the table right now. Thank you.
Chris?
I'll second that, but I also want to say it was what I felt was a good conversation at the planning committee. And Leader May is exactly right, and Leader May's done a lot of work on this, and appreciate all the work that's been put into it. But hopefully, we're going to, I guess, pick up the football, if you will. Sports analogy, or right the ship, but confident, right? So, and I appreciate the county executive's office, who was at planning also, and yourself, thank you, with the information. Always want to make sure that we are going to be on the right ship before we spend the taxpayers' dollars. So, and I'm glad that we are informed. Mm-hmm. I'm confident that the direction that we're going to be taking is a good one, and obviously we're going to wait and see what the RFP says. But I guess looking in the bigger picture to see to it that the regional market is successful going forward. What other places, what other other facilities around the country are doing, like food. So it's important to agriculture. It's important to the region to have everybody around Central New York getting their product down there. So obviously I'll be supporting it, second it, but we had a good conversation of planning. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Julie?
So yeah, I agree with everybody, especially with our farming community and having the food and plants and everything that it does do. A concern always, I know you're going to get the RFP, is that we don't go back down a rabbit hole with this. And it doesn't, so I guess from my standpoint, because I wasn't at the planning meeting, I did look at the notes, but I wanted to ask, or the minutes, can you clarify moving forward? So after you get this RFP, what is the role of the county versus the role of the market authority? Like, are we going to have a seat at the table? I know we do, what's our role to ensure that in the future it doesn't go into disrepair that it is at this current state?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the county exec's office has been meeting with them on a somewhat regular basis. There will be a seat at the table, more so for Onondaga County. We will be working hand in hand with the market authority and their board of directors moving forward to create this plan. But they understand that there is no county skin in the game until the county is satisfied with the results of this study and the direction that they're taking forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions? Dan?
My question is actually really similar to that. I'm glad that you had mentioned those stipulations that are going to be in place, but how will those be met? Are there going to be approvals, or just us having a seat satisfies it?
So there's going to be 2 more seats added to the board of directors from the county executive, very specifically, in the coming days.
And then those 2 people will ensure that whatever plan comes up with is satisfied on our end, and that we'll meet that. Okay, thank you. And I'm also very glad that this is happening. Good to see, changes there. Thank you.
Chairman?
And once we have the RFP awarded, how long before we'll have the new strategy and the plan done? How long do you think it's going to take?
So we're looking to get the RFP out immediately. So we've originally estimated about a 12-month time frame from start to finish. Obviously, there's an urgency to this, so we'll be trying to expedite that as much as we possibly can, down from 12 months.
Any other questions? And we've got a motion, we got a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Megan. Next is Water Environment Protection. Shannon?
Morning, everybody.
Hi.
So in front of you today for your consideration are two personnel resolutions. And so when we went through these at EPE committee, we kind of reviewed them as a whole. And so I certainly would welcome that discussion if you want to. But I'm going to start with the first one, item 2A, which is, or actually, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Item 3A, which this is related to 8 different management positions within the WEP department that are currently vacant, that we have been recruiting for some over the period of almost 2 years. And we've been unsuccessful in attracting and obtaining a candidate for these positions based on the current hiring, which we are authorized through county executives' approval up to a step 3 on the management salary plan. And so in order to facilitate our negotiations and our recruiting efforts, we are seeking your authorization on these various positions to go up to advanced steps. Once we obtain a candidate, we'd like to be able to offer up to a higher salary. And so, and not all of them are all the exact same step. The steps that are in this memo are based on what we know we are competing against in the private sector, based on certain skills, opportunities that those candidates have elsewhere. So really, in just kind of giving you a high level of these 8 positions, there's one that is in the administration. It's the Deputy Commissioner of Regulatory Programs. Actually, so never mind. So there's capital programs. We've got 2 vacancies within our capital programs, and this is impacting our abilities to get projects. The capital improvement program, which you guys know is very large, very comprehensive, and has a lot of projects in it. So we are looking for advanced staff to get our management engineer position filled. This is the position that's supposed to be overseeing all of our program managers, really ensuring that those projects that you've authorized us to do, that those project managers are getting those RFPs written, they're getting them out in the streets, they're keeping those engineers working, they're progressing those projects back to you for construction funding, and then getting them back out on the street for construction. So with that position vacant, a lot of those duties are now rolling up to the deputy commissioner who is administering that. And within our operations division, so the next level down, so kind of backing up, within our organizational structure, there's the commissioner, the deputy commissioners, and then below that, the next level of management titles, depending on which division you're in, is either a director or a superintendent. So a lot of the positions in our capital program, you'll hear they're a director or a management engineer. And the operations side, which is under the deputy commissioner of core functions or operations, those are superintendent titles. Those superintendents are overseeing the majority of our department, the majority of our staff. That's the boots on the ground. We have we've got 1 vacant position, and then we've got another vacant position in the superintendent level that's coming up. Both are very critical. I will talk about them individually. The pump station maintenance superintendent position we created 2 years ago to facilitate the growth of our pump station maintenance team. That pump station maintenance team, it needs to grow. We need more mechanical maintenance people under the pump station side. The second position equally is critical. It's our instrumentation and electrical superintendent. This position oversees all of our instrumentation and electrical maintenance workers that are the lifeblood of our department. They're keeping our systems powered up. They're keeping the control systems going. We did get advanced step authorization. For the current candidate who's been in the position for a couple years now, he is getting ready to retire, and we need to be able to move quickly to advertise and recruit and backfill that position. That one is, I'm looking at you, Charles. It is very important for us. But the remaining 4 positions are arguably probably the most critical in terms of the future of the community, where we need to go as a department. And this is in our regulatory programs. We are vacant within that division of our department. We are missing the deputy commissioner. That position recently vacated. The person left late last year to go back to private sector. We're missing our industrial pretreatment director position, which oversees all of our industrial permits and will be overseeing the industrial permits that we're going to be issuing to Micron. We are missing the collection systems director, which oversees, this is the capacity management, this is the entire conveyance system overseeing the 2,000 miles of collection systems. We did have a person in this position. They recently left us and they went back to private sector. And then last one is our process control director, which oversees all of our treatment plants, their capacities, and managing what is the community going to need, how is that plant operating, do we have capacity, can it be optimized? So these are a lot of very critical positions that are critical functions for us for the current day and for helping us develop and manage the plans for the future. Having these management positions filled is going to be critical for establishing new processes, new procedures to onboard all of those other additional vacancies that are below them. So as much as we've got vacancies throughout the department, really filling those management positions is what drives the vision and sets up those policies and procedures to onboard everybody else to keep them working efficiently. So that's it. I would open it up to questions.
Questions? Chris?
So, are they all grades or just step? So, where are they going from and going to? I guess if that's the.
Yep. So, let's see here. I'm going to pull up my. I don't have them here. So a grade, any one of these that are a grade 36, the step 1 salary is $95,791. And so within the memo of support, you can see the various positions where we are seeking authorization to potentially offer up to. So it varies from each of the different titles. Positions that require a professional engineering license, we are seeking authorization to go up to a step 15. Positions that require any other, let's see.
They're all steps.
Yeah, they're all
So
very.
36, step 15, so it would be anyway. So basically what you're doing is saying, okay, well, it's 36, 95, 791, but it would give authorization to go up to, including in 116 or 350 to one, okay,
Right, another, potentially offer up to an additional $20,000.
okay. In most cases, other than, but that's pretty, well, some will go to step 7, 14, and then 37. What is it for 30? You said the 36 was 95, 791. What's the 37?
The grade 37, which is our deputy commissioner position, that starts at $105,000.
Any other questions?
No, I just want to, I'll just say, and I say this probably every time, I just want to, I understand very, very cognizant of the fact that in some instances, we need to offer additional pay beyond to attract what we need to. But thinking sometimes when we do our negotiator collective bargaining agreements and there's percent raises, I think sometimes rank and file and say, well, then you're going to go just to a $20,000 or $25,000 raise in some instances, so. But, you know, so I guess, I don't know, is it a catch-22, right? We need the people, we have to understand it. We understand that there's competitive marketplace, and
I think it's important to keep in mind, too, not just looking at this as a raise above that's starting. I think you've got to look at the entire organizational pay structure and where the union salaries are versus those management and how they interact with each other. You know, some of the issues that we've got is getting union staff to take these positions, because our grade 15 positions within the union are currently making $99,000 at top step. So, you know, I don't think it's as straightforward as, you know, 20% raise to 20% raise. I think it's the whole career path planning and looking at salaries within the organizational structure.
fair?
Julie?
Shannon, I think, can you just elaborate on that? One of the things you had mentioned in EP was that you had a position that you wanted to move somebody internally, but it would have been a pay cut.
Right. So we've got particularly like the process control director. So our preference obviously would be, if we have internal candidates, to get them to take the management positions. But we had the process control director position, and we have a really strong internal candidate who's currently a union employee, and to go up into the management position would not, when you look at going from an hourly position that's eligible for overtime, going into a salaried management position, would actually not equate to a pay increase for the additional responsibilities. So, and again, that's some of the nuances. It's not just salary for salary. It's hourly versus salaried employees. You know, some of the different benefits that you know we're really trying to understand a little bit more the details of.
So that's an interesting point. I guess that's a level of detail that I didn't know. So, and how many, out of these 8, how many instances are we trying to recruit from within and we can't find people?
Mostly, particularly on the operations side, our preference is to continue to maintain that, like, internal promotion up into the superintendents. We want those positions to be internal candidates because they're going to understand our work order systems, how we order things, how we get things done. We do have currently, the operations superintendent was an internal promotion from a union position. The wastewater treatment plant mechanical maintenance employee who's in that position was an internal candidate who came out from the union. We did get advanced steps to promote those people into those positions when they took over those duties. Sewer maintenance superintendent, the gravity sewer maintenance, actually was an internal promotion from a union position. Again, was advanced step authorized to get them into that. So our preference has been historically to push those in. Now, when you get into the regulatory programs, we don't necessarily have the skills in-house to promote from within those positions. So we do have to compete out in the public to fill those positions.
So then how many are regulatory and how many are operations?
On the vacancies currently?
No,
or
on these step
all
increases.
over.
All over.
So the regulatory positions, there are 4 that we are seeking advanced step, and then on the operations side, there's 2, and we don't have internal candidates for either of those operations side. We don't have any internal candidates at this point for those.
Thank you.
Brian, do you have?
Thank you. Thanks, Shannon. I don't have questions per se, just a couple comments. The first, I think, is most relevant, and that's a thank you to Julie and the members of the Environmental Protection Committee, who I feel did an outstanding job vetting the issue. It's, in fact, one of the better meetings I've seen in a while. Everybody on the committee was well prepared, asked great questions, and really talked through the details that we were able to talk through at that point. So I just wanted everyone to know how much I appreciate that. Is it?
I think the planning committee was a pretty good committee meeting,
It was
too.
outstanding,
I
Dave, but
mean,
that's a given.
Yeah,
You know,
okay, all right.
You know, that's a, you know, whatever. But, and the point, I plan to support this item, just as I have, and this body has, just about every time you've come in with another version or iteration of progression, maybe that's a better word, of your plan as you've moved along. I certainly realize that you guys, of all county departments, are in an incredibly reactive environment, right? In that things are moving pretty fast and furiously around you, which is tough and challenging for sure. And it's my hope that, you know, with each of these iterations, and I've said this before, that we're closer to cracking the code on what we need to recruit and retain employees. And again, I plan to support this. My second comment really has nothing to do with this issue, but just something that I think is important for all of us to remember, and I say it every time we do creates or step increases or whatever, and that is that it's fantastic that we have salary savings. That speaks to good fiscal management. It also speaks to the fact that it's really hard to fill positions in county government these days. In other words, it's a good fix, but I remind everyone that there's a downstream effect to using salary savings to do increases, because ultimately we got to budget for it and have revenue for it in the subsequent year. So it's just something to keep in mind that, you know, again, it's a fix, but it's not necessarily a solution in this department or area of county government. It's an easy solve. You know, we tax for the increase in the rate, so there's a direct way to solve the problem. But again, you know, when we use 101 savings, I'd love to hear more of a solution when we talk about it, that's all. But again, I intend to support this. Thanks again to the committee, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Shannon, you were asked for an org chart of your management at least to.
Yep.
Okay, were you able to put that together?
We do, unfortunately, we had some computer issues with it, so I will get that over as soon as I can. And the last version of it I had was actually in a budget packet presentation but I wanted to make sure it was updated and reflected.
Yeah,
the current.
I don't want your whole, everybody, I just wanted to see what your MC positions are. I kind of used your budget to come up with one.
Yep.
Based on the different, you mentioned 4 different divisions, and you have 3 deputies right now?
Correct.
So with this one deputy commissioner of regulatory programs, if you advance step that, how does that impact the other 2 deputies that you currently have?
This advanced step would put them just under the other 2 because they've been here longer, so.
Okay, because again, that is a consideration, is when you're moving up, you got to make sure that everybody stays in the same scale.
Yep.
I did this for quite a while at Onondaga County, so I know every move impacts somebody else.
Yep.
So currently, right now, you have one person that will be getting an increase. It's not to fill a vacancy, correct?
Correct.
And that is your Director of Asset Management.
That is correct.
Okay. And then you mentioned just now that one person's going to be retired?
Yes.
Be retiring soon, and that's why that position is filled?
Yes, correct. So the
Okay.
I&E superintendent is currently filled, but he's retiring this summer.
Okay. It's very confusing. I mean, I came up with like a total of 41 MC positions. If there's any vacancies, I just feel like right now, if those are positions that are there that you don't foresee using, that we should clean up the roster and get rid of some of those positions. I wasn't here at the time that you presented your overall plan to create different positions, but are any of these 8 positions that you you created as part of your plan, or are these existing positions?
So I actually did bring the roster with me for Dan. We currently have total roster positions, we have 409.
Right,
34 of them are MC,
okay.
375 are CSEA.
So the 34 that are MCs, are those all filled?
No. 11 of them are vacant.
11 of them are vacant, okay.
And
of those
and
11.
I'm not distinguishing them between funded and unfunded.
Yeah.
And then of the 375, 78 of the union positions are vacant.
Are vacant.
We have a total of 54 funded vacant positions. So we're funded to 374, and we have 54 funded vacant that we are actively recruiting for.
Okay. The org chart would be very helpful, I
Yes.
think, for all of us.
And so going back to you had asked about the positions that were created. So when we started this workforce development, and actually it was an interesting exercise for me trying to go back to look and see when we started in '21 and we were presenting the 2022 budget, as I mentioned at EP, you know, I think our initial thing was just let's restore funding and get people back here. And then I think when we got into it in '22 and we really started unpacking what the issues of the department were, what we realized was that we were going to be bringing in a whole bunch of new people, and we didn't have the management structure to oversee it, right? We didn't have the ratios to have the correct people to actually develop the processes and procedures of those programs, to properly onboard all of the people who were supposed to be doing the work. And so what was created as part of that, of these, the ones that were created was the Director of Asset Management. And we created the Industrial Pretreatment Director, the Collection Systems Director, and the Process Control Director. Now, keep in mind, the Industrial Pretreatment and the Process Control Directors were almost identical or very, very similar to positions that the department had. I'm going to say probably 10 years ago or so. And so much, like the department went through a period where we had a lot of management positions that we couldn't fill. This is prior to me being there, but as I've been told, so when those positions couldn't be filled, they basically got abolished. And so what we're trying to do with these is just to bring back the old management titles to oversee those programs, to reestablish the processes and procedures within them,
So that if there are some there that you're not using, we should look at either unfunding or abolishing them.
Correct. And I think that is something that, you know, we're absolutely doing as we're starting to look at, you know, as we refine the process and we're starting to understand better what is the right size staff. You know, I don't want to just add bodies to add bodies. I want to make sure that I'm adding the right people with the right skills and giving them the right tools so that they can work efficiently.
So here you've got a management engineer at a 36, and then here on your roster, it looks like you have a sewer maintenance and improvement engineer at a grade 35.
The sewer maintenance inspection engineer position? Correct.
So how do you know, both of them have the same credentials. How do you justify now you've got, what is the management engineer position responsible for?
So they're completely different. I mean, like, I don't think that they have the similar credentials. The sewer maintenance inspection engineer does not require a professional engineering license. So they actually will report to the management engineer, who does have to have a professional engineering license.
Okay, so in this case, the title may say engineer, but it's not, they're not PE.
We have a lot of engineers who aren't engineers at WEP.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. I think in environmental protection, you mentioned about losing people to Micron. Have you actually lost any of the engineers to any of your MCs to Micron?
We haven't
as of
lost
yet?
anybody to Micron, but we've lost them to other private sector opportunities. And then some of our potential candidates we have
Lost. Okay.
before we could actually land them in the boat.
Do you really feel by doing these advanced steps that you're going to be able to recruit candidates? Is this enough? Or do we need to start looking at other ways of conducting business where maybe we use a private sector engineer to do different aspects of what we need to get done?
You know, I think, so I know we've got several candidates to fill. I'm going to say probably half of these that we're requesting. We feel very confident that we've got a good candidate that we're hoping to get started up this summer with your authorization. You know, I think some of this goes back to the second resolution of strengthening our HR functions and really building an administrative team. You know, I think one of the areas that we do struggle with as a department is like recruiting and hiring and onboarding. I don't know that we're necessarily at a point where we need a private recruiter yet. I think what I would like to focus in on, kind of looking at the process, is figuring out what that orientation, what is that onboarding program, figuring out how we spend the first 6 months to get, once we get that new candidate in, we get them acclimated to our department. You know, we're big, we're complicated. Some of the feedback that we're getting on some of the exit interviews for people that are leaving is that it's big, it's massive, and you know, guilty of it myself, of taking a direct report and needing them to get to work and maybe pushing them into work too soon. So I think I would like to focus in more on, like, not just getting those candidates, like, but making sure that when we get them, that we've got a good process to integrate them and keep them here and retain them. So I think it's, you know, there's a little bit of, I want to hire, I do. I absolutely want to fill these positions, personally for myself, because I need the staff, I need the support, but I also want to make sure that I'm creating a place where people want to come and stay.
Yeah.
And so I think if we focus in on that, and we focus in on, we have a lot to offer as a county department from a quality of life perspective.
Right.
So, I don't want to go down that road just yet. I want to make sure that I can give them a good career before we go down.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I've worked for government for 35 years or more, and obviously the benefits sometimes outweigh what you would be making in the private sector. So I think just, using that as an advantage to try to recruit candidates is always a good option. This is really not a question but more for Steve and/or Carl. Do we see this as a precedent? There are other departments that may have professional engineers that are not at this grade. Are we going to see next month or down in a couple of months those other departments looking for these same type of step increases?
Before I answer that direct question, I just want to back up to a comment you made and a comment that Leader May made regarding approving personnel changes off budget cycle, which is really something that we frown upon typically. Obviously, I'm supportive, the executive supportive of these changes because we understand the urgency of them and the need that Shannon and her department have. Right. But typically, this is not how we do business. And so what you'll see, to directly respond to Leader May is, it doesn't automatically result in an increase in their budget in the following year. We will certainly be looking at that roster with Shannon and her team as we prepare the 25 budget and say, okay, you might have some positions here that maybe don't fit in your organization anymore. We're going to use the funding from those to pay for higher salaries for our professional staff. So that may or may not happen, but I just wanted to be clear that voting on these types of changes off budget cycle doesn't lock us into, a higher rate of spending the following year. And it kind of leads to your question, which is, we're always looking at the county's roster from a management perspective to try and, identify those issues where we're making a move here, how is it going to impact the rest of the management structure. And the pay scale. So we'll be looking at that the remainder of this year to understand, the potential impacts of these changes and other changes we've made recently, and taking a fresh look at that MC schedule to understand, are we being competitive? You saw what the city did. I'm not suggesting we're going to do that, right. But the reality is we got to continue to be current and look at that salary structure to ensure that we get the most qualified people we can to fill these roles.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear what you have to say. Any other questions? Oh, Carl, yeah? Oh.
Just to follow up on what Steve was saying about analyzing that. Personnel department is kind of regularly, but right now we're doing an analysis already of the MC schedule for use by the executive and by the CFO. Regarding some of the things, the MC schedule runs from grade 22 to grade 44, right. And across 22 steps. So we're looking at, it's pretty spread out. We're looking at what makes the most sense for Steve and his team to use as we head into the budget. That's already underway.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Charles, in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Oh, what was that, Chris? No, okay. Moving on to the next one.
Item 3B is the personnel resolution to create a fourth deputy commissioner position that would oversee administrative functions. This position is, as I kind of mentioned and started talking about, is really one of the things that when we looked at our old organizational structure, we were very flat. And we had an administrative director position that was, and I don't remember exactly the grade, I think it was a grade 34, maybe 35, and it was responsible for overseeing everything from an HR perspective. And it was the financials, the vehicles, the safety, the training, personnel, payroll, and it's an awful lot. And in particularly as we looked at recruiting and hiring, we went from hiring an average of 10 to 12 people a year now in various promotion positions. Our personnel functions have gone up by at least an order of magnitude. We're looking at now closer to almost 200 personnel movements a year. And that's your promotions, your internal promotions. So every time somebody retires, there's an internal promotion, there's a backfill. That team needs to grow and to support all of that onboarding, the recruiting, the hiring. And then parallel to that is the training. And so you've got a lot of new staff that are either new to the department or new to their position, and really understanding that they're being asked to do things that they might not have the skills to do. And so we really need to grow our internal training program to support that. And as we looked at that workload, it's become clear over the last 3 years that we need a better management structure, and I need a deputy to oversee that, to help me really drive that vision, to create that workforce development program, so that when we do get those, when they've been successful at recruiting and hiring those candidates, they come here and we're training them, we're giving them their technical training, we're giving them their safety training. So this is a really critical position for me to support the restaffing of our department and the future growth of it.
Okay, questions? Well, I guess I'll start out with this one then. So right now, on your roster, you have a personnel officer that I believe is filled, a training officer, which I don't know, is that filled?
It is filled, yes.
Okay. An employee relations officer that is filled.
No, the employee labor relations officer is not filled.
Okay. Vacant.
Or no, no, you're right. The officer positions are filled, but none of the directors are filled.
Okay, so then you have a vacant director of personnel and labor relations.
Yep.
And then you have a director of workforce development that are vacant. That's 8 MCs, and now you're asking to create a deputy commissioner in charge of all of them.
Correct.
I don't want to call my personal experience, but I was all of them at a lot less of a grade for about 1,200 employees at Onondaga County. Is there any of those positions that you feel as if could be abolished, that you're not going to use?
No, we're going to fill them all. And I think keep in mind too, when you look at, we are an industrial department. When you look at the various divisions of our department, when we've got mechanical maintenance, working at wastewater treatment plants, we've got licensed operators, we've got our industrial and electrical, I can't stress enough the safety related to that type of work and the technical training that those groups require. So you've got quite a bit of staff development and safety and training that needs to be administered. And then along with that, from the Director of Employee and Labor Relations, there's quite a bit of work. I mean, you've got staff working across the county, administering workforce policies, procedures, and making sure those policies, they've been pushed into an employee handbook and they're being properly trained and reviewed with the employees on a routine basis.
Okay. Can I get more information on exactly what each one of their roles is?
Absolutely.
Could you put something down?
Yeah,
for me?
I've got a document that I can send you.
Okay. Because again, to me, that just seems like there's more management than is needed.
And keep in mind too, I think, one of the things that we've, and I hear what you're saying, and I think at face value, I probably would have thought the same thing 3 years ago. Really, but the biggest thing that I'm hearing back from particularly new employees or exit interview employees is there isn't an employee handbook. The policies, procedures aren't clear. There isn't a really good, robust training program on, to cover different things. So we do need management staff to create those policies, create that training programs, implement those, and carry those out, and make sure they're meeting with and supporting the other divisions, particularly our operations team, the boots on the ground, need that administrative support to stay safe and stay current with their skill sets.
So if you do a grade 37, step 12 for this position, how does that line with your other 3 deputies now that you have?
It would keep them lower because the other 3 deputies are required to be professional engineers due to the type of work that they're overseeing.
So a 37, 12 is less than what your other 3 deputies are?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Dan?
I was just going to ask, if we can get that document that you requested as well, I would appreciate that information. Yeah.
I'd just like to say, Shannon, you and your staff, you're doing a wonderful job. I know for a fact that they're working on the hiring right now, especially with the operational, the maintenance, and the I&E, mainly because of with Micron, everyone's talking about the white rooms, but with the infrastructure. And so, as she said, we're going to need managers, managerial staff to run this, also to oversee it. So,
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. I would like to not take a vote on this at this point in time because I have requested some additional information from you with the org chart and the description of what these positions would be doing. So I would like to hold off until I get that, and then with intent to have this on for session.
Okay.
Okay? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that okay? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the OCC. They adopt the annual budget. OCC was here, last week to make a presentation? Yeah. And is there any questions regarding the OCC budget? Obviously, nobody spoke in favor or against it. I think OCC does a great job. You're moving it. You're seconding it. All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. The standard workday, this is just a resolution to accept the standard workday resolution for elected officials.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, moving on. We have, Steve, you're going to come up and talk about local law.
How are we doing today? So the local law you have in front of you today, there's some background, some overview I want to provide, and then we're going to have, it's going to be a group effort here. We're going to have Ben touch on the legal aspects of the local law, and then I'm going to have Don come up and highlight really the material, impactful changes that are going to be required now, mainly after we have a delinquent property tax auction as we go forward. So I just wanted to set expectations here for that. So the local law you have in front of you for consideration really pertains to how we treat proceeds from property tax auctions. So to give you some background, I think most of you are aware, if not all of you, that last May, the U.S. Supreme Court decided unanimously, I believe it was, that a homeowner in delinquent tax homeowner in Minnesota, Tyler versus Hennepin County, the homeowner's property was, foreclosed on for delinquent property taxes, subsequently auctioned at public auction for, more than what the taxes, penalties, and interest were owed on the property. And the law at the time, including not only in that state, but in this state as well and others, was that the local municipality, the county in this case, was allowed to retain those dollars. So this case made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and Ben can slap me around if I'm not getting the legal jargon right, under the takings clause of the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously ruled that it was unconstitutional for municipalities to do this. So that's the law of the land now. So that case happened, like I said, last May. The state legislature quickly looked to coalesce around a few bills that were quickly drafted to try and address it, the issue before the end of state session. Because now that's the law of the land, the state has to act, right? They have to now get their law in line with what's the law of the land now. We advocated with NISAC against these bills because they went well beyond addressing the Tyler Hennepin case and started to really drift towards destabilizing, this is my opinion, destabilizing the ability to levy and collect property taxes. Some of the proposals floating around last summer or early before the state session ended, just for an example, one of the proposals floating around was any property that had an age, veterans, or disabled exemption, you couldn't foreclose on at all. So, we sitting here back at the county that actually has to operationalize these things, we're like, well, wait a second, so they never technically have to ever pay property tax again? And what happens? So they die and it goes to their heirs, and does that continue? So you could see where some of this started to drift, or some individuals are taking the opportunity to, in essence, rewrite, real property tax law in New York, taking it from a more, specific issue that we have with Tyler versus Hennepin and broadening it. So needless to say, with NISAC and multiple other counties, including us, we're able to push back on that. And really what came out of it was a moratorium. The governor actually never signed the moratorium legislation, but in essence, that was the result. We didn't have an auction last year because of it, because we didn't have a process in place to abide by the U.S. Supreme Court decision. So we took the year off of having an auction because we didn't have a process in place to deal with any situation where there was a potential excess proceeds on the sale of a delinquent tax property. So fast forward, the state budget that just passed included a law that addresses this. So the governor's budget proposal actually included a law that we were supportive of, that the NISAC was supportive of, and the governor and her council and tax and finance really listened to the counties on the front lines here and really took our advice and our direction and really stood up a law within the budget that was going to be workable for us. So through the whole negotiating process, some more of this lunacy tried to creep back in. A lot of advocacy happened with Ben and Don and I, Nancy Lowry, spent a lot of time working with the local delegation, NISAC, to ensure that our best interests were at hand and that this was a workable solution. And I'm happy to say at the end of the day, that's pretty much what we got, thank God. The real changes, and Don will cover this in more detail. The issue at hand, again, as I alluded to, as I explained, is any situation now as we go forward where there's a parcel that a delinquent tax parcel that we auction, that we bring in proceeds that exceed the delinquent taxes, the penalties, the interest, and now allowable administrative costs, which was a win for us. So we're able to now deduct, I think, and Don can cover this, a standard amount on every parcel if we so choose, or we can identify specific costs. There's a limit to them, but we're allowed to now deduct from those proceeds specific administrative costs to actually get to the point and go through with an auction. So people have to remember the time, money, and effort it takes to ultimately get to the point of auctioning a home. You know, we're not back in our offices twisting our mustaches trying to figure out how we're going to take people's homes and auction them. That's the last thing we want to do. So, can I just, I'm almost done. So, you know, going forward now, there has to be a process for when a situation exists where that happens, where we actually at our public auction properties, if there's a situation where the proceeds exceed the delinquent taxes, penalties, interest, and allowable administrative costs, there's now has to be a process to return that money to the previous property owner and or lien holders. So the state law that passed, which again, our local law that's here is really what it's doing is it's adopting that state law. You know, it's saying, okay, we got to abide by the state law now, and that's what this local law is doing. The biggest win for us is that the court is going to be the one who's going to handle that. So if we run our auction, let's say we have, you know, a couple of properties where we receive more proceeds than what was due, we'll prepare a report, Don will prepare a report, that will go over to the court, and they will be the arbiter of those funds. So the previous property owner, any lien holders will have to petition the court to pursue those funds. That's what we wanted. We did not want to be involved with arbitering liens and you know, having to deal with that process. So that's a high-level overview. I can answer questions at this point. Again, I'd like Ben to chime in with some you know, some legal input, and then Don can talk more specifically about some of the changes that are coming.
Before you pass that.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks for clarifying what happens on the back end after the earlier decision we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I asked, just because you just mentioned charges, and that's kind of it's highly relevant, but it's the minutia of what we're talking about today. What can be charged and what isn't.
Yep.
And you hit the point pretty clearly a second ago. Tax delinquent properties are incredibly expensive for Onondaga County. And if you've been here for any period of time, you know there's a lot of soft costs associated with the process over and above. And that's why I wanted to talk to you before you passed.
Sure.
Over and above. The charges that we're going to see and talk about in a second are very specific and tangible. That's what I saw in the proposed local law.
Yep.
I asked about whether or not we could have a general administrative fee, and you kind of touched on it a second ago too, but that's not in here, correct?
Yeah, I mean, Don can touch on it and Ben can touch on it
Okay.
too, and they will. I believe there's an ability to charge, I think, a flat admin fee per parcel. Is that correct, Don?
Yeah, so we could do the greater of 2% of the total of everything they owe, added on top of the penalties and interest, or for the smaller parcels, $250.
But
So
that is not in this proposed legislation, correct?
it's part of the state law, which
Right.
this is adopted.
In other
So-
words, we don't have to put it in
Correct.
here.
So in
Okay.
essence,
All right,
what
cool.
this local law is doing, and I don't want to take Ben's thunder, it's really saying we're going to comply with the state law.
And then one more financial
Sure.
question, if I could. So, Steve, this changes things a little bit based on past practice.
Yep.
What we haven't talked about, and I know it's probably impossible year to year to really make a comparison, but how much of a financial impact are we really
Well,
talking
there's going to
about?
be actually none, because we already knew that this was going to impact some revenue in the finance budget. So in this year's budget, the '24 budget, we already took out any potential dollars in the past, an estimate of what we might actually collect in.
Compared to, say, prior to 2 fiscal years ago.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
so the '24 budget, we already knew, because this decision came down in May of '23, that we weren't going to be able to retain any of these proceeds. So we zeroed that line out in the '24 budget. So we already took the hit this year. We've already taken the fiscal impact, which, I'll just, head it off right now, varied greatly over the years. It's case by case in terms of, we lost our shirt on many properties, and then on others, there was excess proceeds, we would call them. I never called them that because the law at that point in time was there weren't excess proceeds. That was the price of the property, and those are the proceeds. So, and the other thing, and not to cut you off, the other costs that I think people don't see or they miss is the time value of money. We make towns, villages, and school districts whole. So nowhere else can you levy, have a budget and put a levy in place and you're guaranteed that levy, except for our local governments. So we make all of our local governments whole, and then we chase. Don's, a good part of Don's staff is in place to do this work. We chase that money. The other fact is time value of money. That money that we, in essence, up front to the municipalities, we could be putting that money in investments. Right now, we're earning over 5% in investments. So there's a cost as well that's kind of, maybe not at the forefront of people's minds, but is significant in my opinion.
The administrative costs, because there's just so much.
Yeah.
Not to mention all the staff time with the delinquent property owners.
Absolutely.
Effort from Don's office.
And again, it takes, and Don is, obviously much more, eloquent than I am on these topics, has much more experience and expertise. We do everything possible to avoid auctioning people's homes. I don't know if there's a belief out there that we're just, looking, to do this, and that's, we're looking to churn up, sales of the tax delinquent properties and kick people out of their houses. It's the last thing we want to do. It takes, typically 3 years for us even to get to that point, and there's many opportunities along the way to either enter into an installment payment agreement and other opportunities to, to keep people in their homes, because that's what we want. We want them in their homes, we want them paying their taxes. So, yeah.
Chris?
So the revenue, the total revenue loss that came out of the budget, how much was that?
Well, like I said, it varied over the years on how much it was. So we always just estimated an amount because we really had no clue. It could be a couple $100,000, could be, 500 grand, 600 grand. It's varied over the years because it varies from parcel to parcel, year to year, obviously, on if there's going to be any proceeds over and above.
Which is an estimate, obviously.
Yeah, what we put in the budget every year is always used to be an estimate because we really have no clue on what it might be from year to year basis.
I guess I'm just curious to know what was that and what actually came out of that line. I mean, what actually.
I don't have it in front of me, Chris. My guess is probably $600,000-700,000. We probably budgeted for 23 that we took out for the 24 budget, but I can get the specific number for you.
And then to follow up with Leader May's comment, so the administrative costs, what did you, was there like what is it, $250? Is that we can?
So what's allowable under state law now? We'll still get the penalties and interest and everything, all the other charges that we've always gotten. But on top of that, we can charge 2% of that total, the total due, as an allowable administrative expense, or $250, whichever is greater. So on those really small parcels that we're taking, we're still allowed to charge. They might only owe $1,000. We can still charge $250 without substantiating. If we can substantiate we had a greater cost, like Shopping Town Mall, hired a lot of lawyers, we can charge more than that as long as we can substantiate to the court that, we actually did incur those costs.
I was going to have a follow-up question, but if you're, so we can charge more than that. We can get to, we can get more than $250 if we could substantiate it and if the administrative cost. And a follow-up, so is that a new revenue? Is that with this new law, when it was codified in a state law, is that a new revenue? We didn't get that money before, correct?
No, but what we got is to keep all of the money. So it's still obviously a decrease than what we were previously getting.
Right. Okay.
So, So again, the previous property owner and/or any lien holders on the property are going to be, if there is a situation where there are excess proceeds, after all the delinquent taxes, penalties, and interests are paid, and now these allowable administrative costs, anything left over at that point was what would revert back to the previous property owner or lien holder, where before, none of it went back to the previous homeowner or lien holders. So, and like I spoke to Leader May, we anticipated this because we knew the U.S. Supreme Court decision while we were developing the '24 budget, so we just zeroed out that line. So,
Better be safe than sorry.
yes.
Well, if you want to just run through the law, it might help, and then we can ask.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, let's
perfect.
let Ben go.
So I'll say, this is no pride of authorship here. A lot of this was cut and paste. So this is new, directly from Title VI of Article 11 under our Real Property Tax Act. Article 11 generally doesn't apply, but this was made specifically applicable to us, our local tax act counties. So a lot of these definitions come basically right out from the statute. And to answer the charges, the legal charges it's all of these things. So it's the cost of mailing, publication, interest and penalties, any filings. If we did appraise a property, we could charge that back. That's not an administrative expense. That's just off the top. And then you can do 250, 2%, or when we take that surplus to the court, which we have to do, and I'll explain later, we can justify a higher rate. I will say now, per resolution, our auction fees we charge back are $360. So it might be when we look, this first auction is probably going to be a little bit of a learning experience. We'll see. Obviously, the idea is for us not to lose administrative expenses on an auction, right? We're not trying to lose money on the auction. So we can see if more is justified even using the prior resolution of this legislature setting $360. But at a minimum, it does allow us, on top of all of those other fees, to charge us just to cover auction, attorney's fees, a 250, 2%, or to justify it. Public sale, it's important, it's basically our auction. So if we go by auction, we do not need to do an appraisal. The auction value is the appraised value. They can't challenge it. And that's the amount you calculate the surplus off of, reducing fees, penalties, interest, and taxes. So if there's no surplus, we report to the court, there's no surplus, that's it, on any individual property. True, it's not really a surplus, but if there's no additional, we'll call it a surplus, then that's the end of the proceeding. We give a report to the court. For every parcel that there is what we'll call a surplus, after deleting our taxes, fees, penalties, and interest, then we prepare a report to the court, and basically we notify all of those owners. It could be, we think 40 would be about per year, maximum would be about 40, and then we would notify the court. And the good thing is, once we put that into the court, and notify them, we have no further role. If it's per auction, there's no challenge on the just compensation number, the surplus number. So then we basically, that's it. There's no suits against the county at that point in time. Unless the court directs otherwise, it becomes basically like a mortgage distribution, a mortgage proceeding where they just determine priority of lien holders. The biggest thing in this, as we fought hard for, is we now in the county law department, do not have to determine priorities of liens, which is great. The court can do that like they always have. If we do, which does happen occasionally, sell direct, non-auction, we do need an appraisal now, so that'll change that model. We would need an appraisal, but we can always work that into the sale price, charge that back, but we do need to do an appraisal for these delinquent properties then. If we do a non-public auction, there is an ability for the owner to challenge that the appraisal wasn't correct, and it kind of becomes an appraisal report. So the key takeaway is the auction is the best way to do all these things. There is an option, a way to not do it, but they did kind of preserve our auction model in here and just add onto it a court surplus distribution proceeding that is removed. We already met with the chief judge, administrative judge, to kind of get ahead of this process and let them know they were well aware. So obviously this kind of November will be the testing grounds, but we're in good shape there. So that is basically, that's it. I will say there's another section in here, 5, about tax lien sales. As we know, we buy up all the tax lien sales, but since that is in the Tax Act, I did bring over the section of the new law that addresses how we do tax lien sales. So if we ever went back to that kind of system, you also need to establish a appraised value in that sense. Other than that, the one thing that's not in here is there's also notice requirements. Don and I worked to get a homeowner's notice attached to, so there'll be certain language that's in every tax bill now. We've already added those to the models. And I believe the 4-month delinquency notice or pre-auction notice is going out either this week or next week. And we, per the law, had to get this new homeowner rights document attached to it with 12 of the most common languages in the back, with a link in each language to this homeowner's notice that is now posted on our website, and you can translate into any, there's like 36 languages on there. So we've complied with that already.
Yeah, to jump quickly in there, that was part of what drifted into the final state law that modified the governor's original proposal, was this concept of a owner's Bill of Rights type scenario. You know, our belief is that the noticing and the process that we currently use, once you get to the point of your property being auctioned, if you didn't know it, then I'm not quite sure where you've been living for the last 3 years. But there was some stuff that ended up in the final language, which is fine, and as Ben mentioned, we're going to be complying with, and we have to. It includes some additional noticing, I think some links to credit advisory services, if I'm not mistaken. So there is some additional noticing and resource links that we have to provide in our noticing now. And I believe our tax bills have to be tweaked a little bit as well, too.
And we've already worked with them on that. So we're right there. We're in good shape. Once we put the money in with the court, they have 3 years to claim it. If they don't claim it, it does come back to us. They put that right in here. It doesn't go to the state comptroller. It comes to us to lower the tax levy. So I believe the only other great thing here is that we didn't hold the auction in 2023, so there's no surplus or anything to distribute. It does add a 4-month statute of limitation in it. There was some 3-year look backs, 6-year potentially statute of limitations for paying these back, and New York State stepped in. I'm sure it'll be the subject of legal challenge, so we'll see where it goes. But basically saying you had 4 months from the Supreme Court decision, or you had to have timely filed a Article 78, which is a 4-month statute of limitation when your property was sold, in order to really claim a surplus. So we'll see how that works out for us.
Yeah, so, I mean, back to Ben's comment about the law requiring any unclaimed proceeds with the court going back to the county to reduce the levy. I thought for sure they're going to put in there that, you know, it could go to be used to pay for the hundreds of millions of dollars of state mandate costs that they push back down on counties, but they didn't use that language.
Dave?
Thank you. So this will go to New York State Supreme Court? That will be the court that will be handling these?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. You know, over the years, we've had a really effective program for first-time home buyers, et cetera, you know, through the community development and the housing development fund company, where we would take some selected properties off the sale, hand them over these organizations. They'd fix them up, sell them, and sell them, you know, at a discounted rate to first-time home buyers, obviously income dependent, et cetera. I got the impression there's a way, but probably not a very clean way to be able to do this going forward.
There is.
That's where you got to use the appraisal, I believe.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
They built in a weird, that doesn't really work, like if you auction it for land banks, if you auction it 3 times at the tax value and don't get, you know, your minimum bid in, then but it's this whole process that really wouldn't fit into our system of auctioning 3 times. So the long story short would be an appraisal we'd have to do. So there would be, it does make the cost of those types of deals.
That would then, you know, that's going to definitely be a different dynamic.
Yeah. So there'd be an appraisal. You'd see what the back taxes, fees,
interest.
And
then we'd have to pull out our own pocket to pay for those.
Right. And then if it doesn't meet the appraisal, then we would have to reimburse the
Yeah, I mean, if the
Leaseholder
appraisal is
or
above the delinquent taxes, interest and penalties, then that difference, the
We'd have
county
to
would
come
have
up
to
with-
then pay, exactly. So it's going to be a different calculus on that going forward. And the city actually stood up their own law before the state passed their law, and that's in essence, because all their properties go to the land bank.
Correct.
So that's their process. They're going to have to be appraising, having all of these parcels appraised, and then they're going to have a, a pot of money that is there to then pay any situation where the appraisal's higher than what the delinquent taxes, penalties, and interest were. Which I'm not quite sure that's going to be a huge issue for them, but could be.
Yeah. Thank you.
Luckily, a lot of the properties we go, those ones, the calculus might be a little closer, right?
Yeah.
But not always.
Charles, did you have a question?
Yeah.
The wonderful thing. Just a question. I heard you say you'll be notifying the former homeowners prior to the auction, after the auction, because of course there's no way of knowing whether or not there'll be more proceeds. Will we be notifying the homeowners afterwards, letting them know that they have this option and they have that window where to apply?
Yes, absolutely. Yep, so, within 45 days after we have to notify the court, and then it says right in here that we have to, it's on us to notify the parties post-auction that there is a surplus in court, and that the court will be notifying them of the way in which they can make a claim for those deposited funds in court. Yep. So we
Thanks.
send out a notice, and the court will follow up with another notice.
With that notice, will that just be regular mail, certified, something like that? where
I believe there's
a
a
record of them receiving it.
It doesn't specify in here, but I believe we'd follow the same way we do down, most of ours are, some of ours are certified. I believe that might just be regular first-class mail.
I don't know the answer off the top of my head. If it's required to be certified, obviously, we'll send it certified. Or if we find we're having an issue, with the regular mail service, shouldn't be that expensive.
Thank you.
So there will be an auction this fall?
Yes.
Yep, good, thank you. Any other questions? Dave?
Yeah, my question is, throughout the document, it references residential homes. What about other properties that are not residential homes?
So that was taken right from the statute. There is you'll see that the surplus procedure, any person was right title interest into, so under section 4, it's broader, but a lot of these are geared towards residential particularly.
Okay, so other properties are covered in this, it's just that they're not specifically called out, in that generally section 4 that you're talking about covers those?
So, yeah, I mean, it's across the board. Anybody, if you're a property owner, residential, business, you get the surplus. It's a constitutional right as owner. So but some of these, like the notices, some of those were more geared towards, the statute geared them towards just residential owners.
But the law applies to all properties.
Yeah, that's what this covers all properties, just the other ones aren't called out specifically.
Any other questions? Good, okay, thank you.
Thanks.
This will be on June session? Okay. Okay, thank you. That's it? I'll adjourn. Thank you.
Perfect.